Okay, it's time to get started again. I know in a previous video I said we was going to work on 128 stars moving across the screen randomly. Well, no stars, not yet. I started that video and I kept going and going and going and trying to work for beginners. I kept having to regress back into MMRs and palettes and attributes and strobe and keyboards and that, and I thought, wait a minute, I'm going to get everybody totally confused, especially if you're a beginner. And the main goal is to bring new beginners in to assembly language for the color computer. It's not to scare them off. So I think we're going to start again. Step back, very beginning, and just bring it forward. If you're experienced on computers, you can just skip this and delete it and go on and do something else. But for beginners, let's just kind of move forward and see where we get. Okay, begin again. It would be easier if I knew what the audience was. Are we dealing with first time ever people that played with BASIC, experts in BASIC and have written games in BASIC, or people that know other languages, C, C++, Java, PHP, JavaScript, COBOL, you name them. In fact, there's hundreds of other languages out there, or in some just may know some assembler just enough to get themselves in trouble. So with that, let's just move forward here. So without knowledge of who the beginners are listening to this, I put this together. Okay, when we say computers, we're talking about hardware and software. I know there's also firmware out there, or the BIOS and stuff like that. We're not going to talk about that. Hardware is easy. Okay, it's your computer you're working on, or your phone, etc., etc. Software, that runs on them, that equipment. Two types. I classify them as two types. Operating system, which would be like Windows or Android, OS 9, PC DOS, Linux. And application, anything that runs on them systems under them operating systems. And there's some examples there. You know, Photoshop, GIMP, any programs you write is running under the operating system. The operating system provides many ways to do stuff for you, to assist you. I'm calling them hooks here. Open file, close a file, print, connect the internet. Sometimes there's a lot of them called device drivers. That's the services that they do. Basic, Radio Shack Basic has a lot of those too. That's what we're going to look. So we're going to look at the Radio Shack hooks they provide. And later we can look at how do we code some of that stuff ourselves. Like how do we read a key from the keyboard without asking BASIC to do it for us. All right, them hooks, they can be found in the Unraveled series that I mentioned earlier. I'll have a link to where you can get them off of Color Computer Archive at the bottom of this video. And there's 4 of them, one for each of the basics, okay? And there's the appendixes, and I got them listed there, C, D, F, and G in the various ones that explain them hooks and what the addresses of them are. What we're going to do to start with is we're going to do some of these things that I've listed to. How do you get a keyboard using the hooks? How do we get a character from the keyboard? Set up a graphic screens, etc. Locate and print on a high res text screen. And you can read them. I mean, I don't need to read all of them to you. But we'll look at them hooks and actually use some of them. And then how do we write code that we don't have to use the hook? Here's a question, something to think about. Especially if you're a beginner in assembly language. If you take two numbers and add them together, and I use an example of 7 and 8, you get 15. But in the registers, if say we're using register A, it would have 0F in hex. Well, how do you print that back as 15 on a screen? Because it's 0F on there. All right, what if you add two numbers 346 and 1379? Well, we're going to let BASIC do that via one of their hooks. Okay, the other thing is if you get them numbers from the keyboard in ASCII format, which you would, press the 7 key, you're going to get a hex 37, or press the 8, you're going to hex 38. Just think about it, okay? The easy way to fix that is I got there is just subtract ASCII 0 from it, which is 30, and you get 7 and 8. There are other ways, but that's some of the things to think about in this series. Okay, let's look. One thing I want to do is I want to take a second here and look at that Unraveled series. And the one I got up here is the color basic one, very basic one. It's Appendix C, and the basic rooms and entry points. Okay, that is the hooks, and there's lots of them listed in this one here. Here's a good one. Key in, or get character, which I prefer to call it. Scan the keyboard for a key to press. So if you press A, you're going to get, it'll return to you that A. If there's no key pressed, the control register will tell you if a key was pressed or not. If a key was pressed, that key character will be in register A. And here's the address over here, is where you do a jump subroutine of that. And there's all kinds. There's put character, and you can look at all these. Close a file, write blocks to cassettes. And one interesting, I'll go down here and show you, is BDD9. Floating point to ASCII string. You say, well, I'm not working with floating point, but if you use this one here, you can take them two hex numbers I talked about, you add together, and you can place them in this FPA0, which we'll explain later. And you set a couple other switches in low memory, I think it was, like that, and you branch to the subroutine, and it's going to return an ASCII string for you that you can print to the printer or print on the screen. So that's what a hook does for you. So enough on hooks. So that's kind of what we're going to do. Okay, this is the link. It will be also in the bottom of the notes here. One other thing I'm going to mention, this we're done with this here. This is the end, but as I was looking up stuff, especially programming languages, I suggest you do this. Go to Wikipedia and look up computer programming languages. There is hundreds and hundreds of languages. Stuff that most people know I never heard of that's out there. I mean, there's A, there's B, there's C, there's C++, there's C#, there's a D, there's hundreds and hundreds of language, and everybody that has introduced a language said it's better than the other ones. And one I looked for was one called Autocoder. It's the very first one I learned. I went back to, after the Air Force, I went back to school, and I learned on an IBM 1401 computer, and basically the programming language was Autocoder. It's not listed on Wikipedia anyway, but if you do a search for IBM 1401 Autocoder, it'll bring up and explain the Autocoder language. 1401, I believe it was a 6-bit machine, and the one we had 2,000 bytes of memory. That was it. One of the very first commercial computers types that IBM put out, and that's what I learned on. And then later on advanced to the IBM 360 line. The very first one was an IBM 360 Model 30, which had a switch on it. You flipped the switch and it would run as an old 1401, so you could bring your old programs forward. Anyway, enough on that. I listed them here at the very, very bottom. Okay. Oh, the 360 Model 30, it didn't even have a disk drive. It ran an operating system called TOS, Tape Operating System. Remember in the old movies, you see the tapes back and forth, back and forth. That's what it had. We had, I think, 5 tape drives. That was it. So anyway, enough about stuff I did back in the 60s and early 70s. So hope you enjoyed this. Put something in the comments. I don't know who the beginners are, but put something in there if it's good or bad. And we'll see you. Hopefully next time we'll get something started as far as coding goes. Bye.